Hi everybody, welcome to Power of Knowing Forum's Knowledge Nexus. Tech that drive moves you, ideas that scale you, and our topic for discussion today is why cybersecurity is the growth catalyst for IoT and IIoT strategies. Your go-to podcast on tech, cyberspace, strategy, and growth. I am Prem Kumar, your host today, and we are exploring infrastructure of cloud, security, and IoT strategies that bring up cybersecurity all together. A special welcome to all tuned for Power of Knowing Forum's weekly podcast series 294 live on LinkedIn today. To have this topic discussed, we have Mr. Sunil David, Digital Technology Consultant, ex-Regional Director of IoT at AT&T, Chair for Intelligent Communications Group of IET Future Tech Panel. Let's welcome our esteemed speaker to the podcast event and let's dive into the topic. Hi Sunil, welcome to our podcast. How are you doing today, Sunil?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Prem, for inviting me. I'm doing well, thank you. I hope you're doing well, Prem.
Great, sir. I am doing great, wonderful so far, and happy to have you back again on the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure, Prem.
My
Thank you.
pleasure
Thank you for
having you
inviting me.
back, sir. Sir, just want to understand
Mhm.
this IIoT is the key thing that is happening over the automation and the manufacturing industry today. Can you please uh, share about the IoT adoption in shaping both global and India and the key trends that you want to call out today? Because we are talking more on IIoT and industrial IoT, right? So, what is?
Yeah, thank you, Prem. And very important to start with this in terms of how IoT adoption is really picking up. Uh, but I would say, Prem, that the opportunity is still huge uh, in terms of enterprises, whether it is the manufacturing companies, healthcare, banking and financial services companies, retail companies, in terms of adopting IoT. Today, if you just look at IoT adoption, and I'll just start with India, I would say that we still scratch the surface. There's still a lot of assets that need to be connected to the internet. Okay, so if you just look at manufacturing alone, um, there are the large manufacturers are fairly mature in terms of the digital transformation journey. A lot of the large manufacturers have connected their machines on the shop floor, connected their assets, and are started to see the value of IoT. The mid-sized manufacturers are slowly but surely trying to add more assets and connected them to the internet. But if you just look at the MSME, we have about 6.4 crore, 6.5 crore MSMEs in India. 97% of them are micro companies, which are less than 5 crore turnover, and about
Mm,
30 to 40% of them are manufacturers, approximately. A lot of the micro and small manufacturers have not started to use IoT, right? So, significant percentage of those manufacturers today have to connect to the internet, connect their assets to the internet, and there lies in the opportunity, right? So, just imagine the value that they can get by connecting these assets to the internet, because the amount of data that can be generated as you connect these assets, whether it's a machine on the shop floor, whether it is forklifts, whether it is material handling equipment, again within a shop floor or a distribution center or a warehouse, the data that can be extracted from the physical world, and then the amount, and then of course you apply analytics, and then over that you apply AI, the insights that you can derive from all of that, right? Basis which you can actually predict business outcomes, basis which you can take decisions, right? So a lot of manufacturing companies still have to connect their assets to internet. India is still, when it comes to manufacturing companies connecting to the internet, industrial IoT as they call it, is still on the lower side. Globally, China is leading, Prem. It is not a surprise. A lot of the factories are fairly automated. They have been on this journey for a long time now. Then, if you look at North America, again, US fairly advanced in terms of using IoT, industrial IoT. Europe is also pretty okay, but there is within Asia. If you look at India, there's still a long way to go. That's on manufacturing. But if you look at other segments, for example, if you look at transportation, if you just look at vehicles, whether you look at, especially if you look at commercial vehicles, again in India, there's a lot of vehicles that still need to be connected to the internet. Commercial vehicles. If you look at fleet management, a fleet owner who owns fleet of vehicles, um, a lot of it is unorganized today. When I say unorganized, a fleet owner having less than 20 vehicles, 30 vehicles, they still write start trip and end trip on paper. They have still not digitized that, and there's no visibility in terms of where the vehicle is as it is going from one point to the another point. How is the driver driving? What's his driving behavior? Is he taking the shortest possible route? Right. So, the lot of areas by which you can use technology to do all this, monitor the driver behavior, route optimization, and so on and so forth. So, vehicle telematics, that's another huge growth opportunity, right? So, especially commercial vehicles. Then, if you just look at passenger vehicles, Prem, in India, last year, we 24-25, about 4.5 million connected vehicles were sold, 4 million connected vehicles were sold. About 50% of them were SUVs. And a lot of the SUVs, they are priced at 10 lakhs and above. So the buyer of the SUV today doesn't mind paying a slight more cost for having a vehicle telematics, wherein a telematic device plugs into the vehicle and he has a dashboard in which he can integrate to maps and other infotainment applications, right? So passenger vehicle segment opportunity is huge because just 50% of those 4 million are connected. If you look at the smaller segments, small cars, the sedans, or the hatchbacks, option is still given to the consumer whether you want a connected car or not. And for the OEM today, as you see, Prem, automotive segment, it's a very competitive market, right? Each brand is competing against the other brand, and the basis of differentiation is connected features, right? So, for example, using vehicle telematics, you can know exactly the health of your vehicle, when is the right time to go and get your vehicle serviced, right? Monitoring your fuel consumption, monitoring your behavior, driving behavior, again, route optimization, integrating infotainment, all that stuff, right? So again, automotive, huge opportunity for the auto EMs, and for the auto companies also within the factories. A lot of them have already started to use IoT for a long time now, right? So there are segments within manufacturing which is doing really well. Automotive is doing pretty well. Pharma and chemicals are still behind. FMCG is doing pretty much okay, right? So this is as far as India is concerned. I just wanted to call out a couple of insights from a report which Transformer Insights, leading European consulting company, they came out with a report a few months back, and as per their study of the overall IoT segment adoption globally, as of last year, there were 17.7 billion things that were connected to the internet. Almost 18 billion things. I'm not talking about PCs, laptops, desktops, and iPads and tablets. Not those, but things. A machine, a wearable, an appliance at home, a car, right? Assets, material handling equipment. So I'm just talking about even within the hospital, there are diagnostic equipment and so on, right? There are 18 billion things connected as of last year, and as per their study, they're expecting a 9% growth year on year, and by 2034, we'll probably touch about 34 to 35 billion things in the next 9 years, right? And a lot of that growth is going to come from China, North America, and Europe. India, among South Asian countries, will be leading, but this is the potential that we are seeing. And the last thing which I want to call out, Prem, is that one very important application where we're going to see adoption pick up in India would be in the metering application, smart metering, right? So about 5 years back, 5 or 6 years back, Energy Efficiency Services Limited, which is a joint venture of three public sector companies in India, they came up with an initiative to replace conventional meters. See, all of us have regular meters at home, right? the usual electricity meters, and somebody from the electricity board comes to your home and he makes a reading, he makes a note of your consumption, and and then you get an SMS or a WhatsApp message or an email alert saying that you have consumed so many units, and hence you have to make a payment by so and so date, right? So you still have physical intervention that is needed, someone having to come. There is a possibility that somebody might make a mistake while he is writing the number of units. It can happen. But the objective of ESL, Energy Efficiency Services Limited, which launched this scheme, the smart metering scheme, is to replace 250 million conventional meters with smart meters. Okay, which is 25 crore meters with smart meters. And what a smart meter does is that when you have a smart meter in your building or your apartment, uh, it will capture all the energy consumption data. That smart meter will have a IoT sim in it, and it will transmit the consumption information to the cloud platform where the smart metering application is. And as a user on your app, you can get real-time consumption of your consumption information, and then you can monitor the consumption, and then of course you can pay also based on the consumption units, right? As of date, Prem, just 50% has been installed. 50% of those 25 crore meters have been installed. The remaining are being tendered, and maybe in the next 4 or 5 years, you will have 25 crore meters, smart meters installed. This is just for consumer side. And then if you look at the industrial side, a lot of manufacturers are now wanting to have energy meters in their shop floor to measure energy consumption of the machines. Again, a huge opportunity there, right? So just the metering application, just energy meters, water meters, and so on, huge opportunity, Prem, there. So that's why I said we scratched the surface as far as India is concerned. The opportunity is really huge. And just imagine the impact, Prem, the multiplier effect it would have, because as you sensorize at scale, as you extract data from the physical world, you're dealing with so much of data. And that would mean that you need to have platforms which will store and ingest that data, which means that you need to have solid cloud infrastructure, storage and compute. And that cloud infrastructure is typically in data centers, right? So the data center market is also growing. That's a topic in itself, right? So you need a lot more data centers. And as you generate so much of data, you're applying analytics, you're applying AI. So again, you have AI solution providers who come into play, because you are going to analyze that data. You're going to get insights. You can predict outcomes and so on, and so that it's a multiplier effect, right? Huge data being generated, opportunity for data center companies, cloud providers, AI providers. And what we are clearly seeing, Prem, as far as trends are concerned, IoT and AI are kind of converging. Okay, so no point in having all this data and not being able to use the data and get the insight from the data basis which you're taking decisions, right? So we are seeing clearly convergence between IoT and AI playing out, Prem, and that will only grow in the years to come, Prem.
No, Sunil, I've been fortunate to get into one state's smart metering project where we designed a data center for them, and we worked with a company. I don't remember, it's about 6 7 years back. I don't know, it was a Korean based company, and they worked with us, and we built the data center for one state's smart metering. And at that time we had rolled out for a small test sample in Kerala. We did. I was a program manager for that, and that's a lucky thing that I was able to get to see the smart meters working, how it is getting designed, how the way what you are telling was the same things that we discussed, and those meters were in place. Now, can we elaborate on the IoT security landscape? Because when we started with IoT, we all had just a sensor to collect data and send. Now, today we need to look at the data which is very critical that is going to be collected, right? So, how do we look at this security as a landscape for IoT devices? So,
Right, Prem. So if you just look at IoT security, there are different components that go into building an IoT solution. The first is you have sensors that will connect to the physical asset and measure a particular attribute, right? Pressure, vibration, temperature, and so on, right? So you have sensors, and then you have the IoT gateways, which will connect to the sensors And the IoT gateway will have either a cellular SIM, an IoT SIM which will connect to a cellular network, or that gateway can be connecting to the internet using Wi-Fi, or any low power WAN network, right? So you have the sensors, you have the IoT gateway, and then you have the network, right? The data is being transmitted through a network. It can be cellular, it can be Wi-Fi, it can be satellite, it can even be a fiber network in a campus, right? So there you have the network, and then you have the IoT applications, all the data that is going and getting ingested into an IoT platform, right? And these platforms are then integrated with the cloud environment and connected to the backend applications. It can be ERP, CRM, and so on and so forth, right? So there are lots of components that are going into building the IoT solution: the device, the IoT device, the sensors, the IoT gateway, the network, applications and data, and all that. The weakest link in the chain is the IoT device, right? Because as you expose an asset to the internet, as you connect, say, a machine to the internet, or a car or a vehicle to the internet, every asset, as you connect to the internet, has an IP address, and that makes it potentially hackable, right? So a lot of threats that we have seen in the past, a lot of attacks that have happened. The hacker, the bad guys attack the IoT device because that's the weakest link in the chain, right? If you're able to compromise the IoT sensors, the gateway, which is connected to the internet, then you can penetrate and get deep into the network, and you can really create havoc, right? So for any enterprise user as they embark on the IoT journey, for them security should not be an afterthought. Security has to be designed right from scratch, right? So they call it security by design principles. The IoT device has to be very secure from hardware standpoint as well as security from a software perspective, right? So, for example, an IoT device or a gateway would have a processor, a microcontroller, would have storage, and so on and so forth, right? It has a network module, so it could be a cellular module or it can be Wi-Fi module, right? Now, and you're writing code in that microprocessor, right? The microcontroller, there is an operating system also running on it, right? Now, it is very important that that IoT device or the IoT gateway is secure, completely secure, right? So you could have an encrypted SIM. You could have what is called a trusted platform module. So you got to secure the IoT device. That is very important because if the IoT device is not secure, then it becomes very easy for the hacker to penetrate, right? And a lot of the attacks that have happened because of poor access controls. You'll be surprised, Prem, that one of the one key takeaway that came out of a report which came out last year was that the default password on the device is many times not changed. It is very strange that the default passwords are not changed, and that becomes very easy for the hacker to really guess and the password and really kind of attack the device, right? So fundamental things like changing the default password, and then access controls, right? Whom you want to give access to for the device, you got to have that. Then you would have heard of the term called zero trust architecture, right? Zero trust. So that applies even for the device, whom you wanting to give the access to, right? Don't trust anyone. Verify authenticity, right? So access control, authenticating the right users to connect into the device who might want to configure it, or an enterprise user wanting to manage the device estate, as they call it, right? So you got to secure first the IoT device. You got to make sure that the IoT device is certified, and there's a process by which you certify the device. Then the next thing is you got to secure the network, okay? Because the data that is going can be encrypted. And again, the study that was done last year, they found that I'm just not able to recollect the name of this cybersecurity company which did the study, but a lot of malware is ingested. A lot of IoT malware is ingested. Malware is malicious software, right? And a lot of the data that is going through the network is not encrypted, right? So all these can be dangers that can really cause a lot of damage, right? So one has to secure the network. So as you send data to the network, the data has to be encrypted. like how you have VPNs to connect to a corporate network, right? You have a virtual private network, you have a client, and then you set up a secure tunnel through which you connect to internet. When you look at IoT and you're connecting to cellular network, the service provider would offer what is called APNs, access point names. So it's like a tunnel through internet, but meant for IoT. So you got to use that to connect into the internet, right? So cellular networks are a lot more secure. So 3G, 4G, 5G, all these cellular networks have gone through various evolutions,
Yeah.
and there are standards. For example, 3GPP, Third Generation Partnership Project. They're the one who built the standards for cellular, and they've also
Hmm.
done a lot of work in making sure that the network is secure, right? And 5G today is very secure. 5G follows security by design principles. Pretty much every layer is secured, right? So networks have to be secured, and then eventually the data and applications which are on the cloud environment, that has to be secured, and there you have to use a combination of tools: manage intrusion detection, firewalls that will secure the data, your perimeter, and then the cloud environment, of course, right? So again, the cloud provider has to make sure that they're securing the entire cloud environment, right? So it calls for what is called as the holistic strategy: securing the IoT device, securing the network, securing the data and applications. So security has to be addressed at every layer. And there's a term which is used called defense in depth strategy.
Hmm.
Defense in depth, securing at every layer, not
Yeah.
just at one layer. When you are able to do this, then you can minimize damage, Prem. You cannot ensure a 100% cyber secure environment. Nobody today can guarantee you 100% cyber security,
100%. Yeah.
right? There is always some loophole which somebody will try to exploit. So what the best you can do is to minimize damage, minimize risk, right? And today what you're using is AI, because you want to move to more predictive capabilities, right? You want to
Yes.
get to a stage where using AI, so much of data being generated, and you're able to see just so that an attack doesn't happen, right? You see certain unusual patterns. Someone is trying to penetrate a particular port, and you see huge burst of traffic. Then you know there's something wrong, right? So you start seeing these signs, signatures, and basis that you know that there could be someone who's trying to hack into it, and then you use all the data, and then you can start taking action, right? So today you can use AI. AI can be a double-edged sword. AI can be used to do predictive uh, threat analysis. You can predict a potential threat. Today you also using AI to generate attacks, right? So so one has to be very careful, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
And the AI, if you look at AI also, people also have attackers also are using AI to bring
exactly.
some of the threats
Yeah,
that can be looked at, and more penetration they are trying to do in various port scans they are trying to bring in and stuff
correct.
like that. Now, when we look at IoT breaches cost industries billions, right? How do we calmly or how do we calm the fear that every device is a new doorway for hackers, right? So every device unsecure is a doorway for them. What is your take on it?
Yeah. So again, have to get back to fundamentals, frames. So especially if you have an enterprise which has a large estate of device. For example, a fleet
Hmm.
owner,
Yeah.
count 5,000 vehicles, 10,000
Could be a
vehicles.
telecom player could be one of the
Yeah, telecom players, for example, they have hundreds of towers, so they're using
yeah.
IoT to monitor the towers, right? So if you have
Hmm.
either a telecom player and not just towers, but even, for example, DG sets that are there, through which they're remotely monitoring the performance of the DG set, or any asset, or even
Hmm.
data center companies who want to monitor all the data center infrastructure using IoT remotely, or even manufacturer who have thousands of machines in a factory or multiple factories. So any enterprise which have a large estate of devices, you know, uh, very important that uh, one is, of course, fundamentally you got to make sure that you have the right access controls which I talked about, but also very important, Prem, especially when you're managing a large estate, to do regular firmware updates. This, you would have heard of the term called firmware over the air, FOTA, or
Hmm.
software
Okay.
over the air, SOTA, right?
Hmm.
So as you make an update to your operating system, as you want to make updates to your firmware, or as you see new threats coming, right? For example, zero-day threat. it doesn't have it doesn't have an previous history, right? Suddenly, a company might encounter a zero-day threat, no history of a similar attack before. Then it becomes important that you have very frequent firmware over the air, software over the air updates for your IoT device, right? So that is very, very important.
Yeah.
The second thing is constant, frequent calibration of sensors that are used, right? Because you want to make sure the sensors are capturing data accurately. That again is very critical. And Prem, at the end of the day, um, the security, cyber security, or IoT security is just part of it. This cannot be a
Mm.
chief security officer imperative. While the chief security officer is involved, very important for them to make sure that they have the right security policies, the governance framework, following standards. For example, there is a standard called NIST, NIST, you would have heard
Yes.
of it. There
Yes.
are ISO standards that one needs to follow. So while you have the chief security officer or the chief information security officer responsible to manage your entire IT environment and also the OT environment, the operational technology environment, cybersecurity is something which has to be driven from the top. It is a boardroom agenda because, Prem, I just wanted to give you an example. Just 3 weeks back, Prem, Jaguar Land Rover, Jaguar, which is
Yeah.
part of the Tata Group, they had a cyber attack just 3 weeks back, Prem,
Yes, I
and
got to hear
their
that.
entire production facilities in US, Brazil, India have been have been impacted. They are not been able to resume production. And in UK, they have a
Mm.
plant. They are depending on funding from government now. But I'm just telling you that see the impact. They had an attack. They don't have too many details of what that, whether it was a ransomware attack or phishing or whatever it is. But just imagine their impact. They're saying that the impact to them is almost $2 billion. two
Yeah,
billion dollars
I
impact.
read that about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so one is your revenues got impacted, ability to meet your customer deliveries got impacted, and as companies who have been impacted, there are so many instances. Many pharma companies in India have been impacted before, right? Healthcare companies have been impacted. Um, if you remember, All India Institute of Medical Sciences got attacked through a ransomware attack a year back, right? There are e-commerce companies have been impacted, banking, financial service companies have been impacted. So the impact to the brand and the credibility gets affected, right? And it also affects trust of customers, right? I mean, if you know that your bank in which you are banking had a cyber attack and because of which customer
You
data
lost.
has been leaked, doesn't it impact your trust, right? You
No,
will.
one is trust, the other is the brand loyalty that we would be looking at. We would go with this brand, and that's where now you mentioned an important point of Jaguar Land Rover, right? So
Yes,
it's a name that rings a bell there.
yes.
Now, coming to that kind of how do organizations address IoT security threats given by cyber threats are getting sophisticated day by day?
Yeah, so it again calls for this to be discussed at a board level. This has to be a boardroom agenda, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
one has to have what is called as a security first mindset, right?
Okay.
Security first mindset, uh, which means that one should not look at security through the lens of cost. Okay, I'm going to
Cost.
invest. Like I had a chance to do an assessment of a pharma company in Sikkim 2 years back, a company called
Hmm.
Microlabs, which makes Dolo tablets. You remember Dolo tablet, which is widely used during COVID
Yeah.
time. So I
Yes.
had a chance to do an industry for data assessment of their plant 2 years back in Sikkim, and
Mm-hmm.
Micro Labs is a very small company, not a big. I mean, when I say small, among the pharma players, they'll probably be in the top
Yeah.
20, not like the DRLs and the Sun Pharmas and
Hmm.
all that. Maybe top 20 pharma companies. But I still remember when I met their chief information security officer, I just asked him because pharma companies, one very important thing which they have to protect is their IP, right? The
Right.
formulas, because they are coming up with new drugs, formulations, and all. And hence, protecting the IP becomes important. And I still remember he said that they spent 3 to 4 crores on cybersecurity, right? Huge
Hmm.
investment is made. And for them, they don't treat it as an investment. It is an investment, no doubt. But there's no question of return. Okay, will I get a return? I'm spending 3-4 crores on cybersecurity. Will I get a return on that investment? You can't look at it from that lens,
Yeah.
because if you have an attack, just imagine the impact to your brand, your credibility, right? It takes a long time to restore that with your customers, right?
Exposure.
Right? And then
Yeah.
if you have attacks, there are certain countries where you get penalized, right? So if you're
Hmm.
not compliant with certain security standards, the companies have to pay a huge fine, right? If there are data breaches and all this stuff, right? So to answer your question, it has to be driven from the top. It is a boardroom agenda. The CEO has to get involved, right? So one has to build a security first mindset. And very important thing, Prem, is that it is not just the chief security officer and the board and the CEO. When you look at a large enterprise, every employee also has to follow certain hygiene. So like how you have regular health hygiene, one also has
Yeah.
to follow certain cyber hygiene, right? And you've seen how people click on phishing links, getting duped, right? Accessing fraudulent websites, right? And then you would have had APK, Android APKs getting ingested into your phones, and because of which the hacker is able to kind of make fraudulent transactions because he has got access to your phone. So very important that every employee, he or she, takes steps to make sure that they're not compromising, right? Companies allow mobile phones to access enterprise applications, so very important to have mobile device management software accessing when you're trying to download apps, to make sure that you have the right tools that are checking whether the apps are authentic apps or not, right? So you and I also have to make sure that we are following proper processes. We are not clicking on the wrong links. We are following proper standards, methods when you're accessing into external websites and all that. So it is every employee's decision, every employee's responsibility, I would say, when it comes to cybersecurity, Prem.
Sunil, one question out of the curiosity. Now, can a mobile device be called as an IoT device because it's sensitive?
Yes, in a sense, yes, because you have so many sensors in a mobile device, right?
Yeah.
Camera is a sensor; it is taking a picture of
Hmm.
you, right?
Okay.
Then you have an gyroscope, the tilt, right? Uh,
Hmm.
that is also a sensor. Then you have the GPS, which is also tracking location, right? So
Yeah.
even a mobile device is with so many sensors in it. In a way, is like an IoT device. Prem, yeah.
Now, as an individual, what specific habits and hygiene can be followed in order to avoid being impacted? Because why I brought this mobile, this one is today, I think India is the largest consumer of mobile devices, right?
Yeah.
And seeing the kind of smartphone usage, people are still thinking I'm using a phone which is nowhere related to cybersecurity or it does not give some kind of a data. So, as an individual, what specific habits and hygienes can be followed in order to avoid being impacted while I use a smartphone or an IoT device?
Yeah, so first and foremost, see, if someone is spending 30-40,000 for a smartphone, spending extra $2,000-$3,000 for a nice mobile device management software, or there is software that you can, an app that you can download on your phone, which will kind of monitor every external website that you're connecting to. Okay, and also when you're trying to download apps from an app store or a play store, it will check whether those apps are authentic apps or not, because there are so many of these fraudulent apps. If you download that,
Hmm.
then it obviously can be dangerous, right? So fundamentally, got to make sure that you have that. Second thing is that simple things, Prem. You got to make sure that access to your phone, you can either use your facial expression, or your you can have a an access code, so that you don't have others to kind of access your phone, right? That then another thing is HTTPS, right? Simple HTTPS websites is
Hmm.
what you got to access. The moment you see something which is not having that, which means that it is not secure, right? And then I'm sure you would be getting a lot of junk mail, um,
Yeah.
and many of them are phishing mails, um, which is trying to, and then there are social engineering websites, people who do social engineering. They call you and they, very common, right? Social engineering, where they call you and, uh, you know, uh, get to a point where you reveal your password, right?
Yeah.
Right. So one has to follow basics. You don't have to look at very complex ways to uh, follow security. Fundamental things, simple, good, very nice mobile device management tools to secure everything. Not clicking on phishing links, not clicking on apps which are not, not gone through its, which are fraudulent. Just genuine apps that you need to. And then you would have probably seen unsolicited messages coming on WhatsApp or Telegram. Somebody
Yeah.
sending you a message, and
Nowadays, not messages, Sunil. Even the calls are coming in directly saying that WhatsApp calls are coming in directly saying that we are giving this service, that service, and stuff like that. So
yeah, so you got
WhatsApp
to
is
avoid those
becoming a
apps.
next. Yeah.
Yes, and you would have seen instances of people, being victims of sextortion, right? Somebody would
Yeah.
make a video call, and the other person at the other end, someone who's
Yeah.
nude, and they take a screenshot when you connect, and then they blackmail you. They send that image to your
Yeah.
connects. Very common. Many people have, spent lakhs trying to, prevent them from doing that. Very, very common. And then Facebook, had an instance in the past where someone created a fake ID of me and reached out to my
No,
connects.
that happened
Very
even with
common.
me actually, and one guy. It happened about 3 4 months back, where an Instagram account was created and they published saying that I was arrested and stuff like that, and
Uh,
they called one of my friend, and that guy called me. He is in UK, and he called me. He's a regular. We connect on a regular time, and he called me. Are you safe? I said, what happened? Then he gave me the link saying that this is one guy who's trying to act like though you are there and you have been arrested and he's asking for money. So we all sat together and we started bombarding that guy. And finally, that guy found out that we got to know, and that guy, we could not trace him again. We tried all the aspects to bring him into our zone, but we could not. Now, looking at those kind of things, manufacturers
one more
here,
thing which is common that you would have read, Prem, is digital arrests. Somebody would call you
yeah,
and say that
digital
I'm
arrest,
calling from telecom department, or you're being charged for money laundering. Then they do a video call, and there are so
the
many elderly
DHL
citizens
case.
who have been impacted. They end up sending lakhs and crores of rupees. They exhaust their bank accounts, close their fixed deposits, and later on they realize that they have been victimized. And there's nothing such as
No,
digital arrest.
we had one speaker who was a victim like that, and finally we were able to crack and get the. We could not get everything, but we got some of the amount that she had lost. So we used some. One of our other speaker is a cybersecurity, especially on these kind of fake fraud stuff. So we used his help and we were able to. Now, asking about that, now everywhere we are using IoTs, right? IIoTs and IIoTs. How do we look at manufacturing fearing IIoT adoption, exposing critical operations, right? And how do you secure factories without slowing innovation? Because now one way is IoT, then is the next IIoT, right? So which is more to the industrial side of it. Your take on it.
Yeah, sure. So when you look at manufacturing industrial IoT, so you
Mm.
have the OT environment, the operational technology environment, which is all your
Yeah.
machines, right? And from the machines, you're extracting the data. So you have the OT environment, and then you have the IT
Mhm.
environment, which is your cloud, the data, enterprise systems, and other applications, right? So a quality system, a production system, a CRM system, ERP system. So you have the IT side and you have the OT side, right?
Mm.
So typically, what manufacturers try to do is try to maintain what is called as an air gap between OT and IT. But today, in a highly interconnected world, it's very difficult to maintain an air gap between OT and IT. So we are
Mm.
seeing, because of adoption of IoT picking up, OT and IT are tightly integrated today. OT is tightly integrated. OT, IT and OT are tightly integrated. And if one is able to, a hacker is able to penetrate OT, then he can get into the IT systems. So there are ways by which you can protect the entire OT environment. So, like for example, when I was in AT&T, we used to partner with a company called Bayshore Networks. It got acquired by another company called OP SWAT later on. But like Bayshore, like OP SWAT, there are companies who offer OT/IT cybersecurity solutions. So you can implement an OT/IT gateway. So one option is you have an OT/IT gateway, which is a hardware appliance. On one side, it will connect to the OT side, and the other side it will connect to the LAN, to the IT systems. And that appliance is where you have the right policies that are there. And every packet that is going through the internet, they do what is called deep packet inspection. Every packet is inspected. If somebody wants to control a machine remotely, then that packet is inspected and only authentic traffic is passed, right? So they do whitelisting of IP addresses. Only those with a specific IP, can connect into that device or the appliance, right? So one can build a complete hardware-based gateway, which will connect the OT side, and that gateway is very robust, very resilient, and certified, of course, and all the policies. Of course, you work with the manufacturer to make sure that you follow the right policies and enforcement. It is one thing to come up with policies, but the important thing is the enforcement of those policies, right? And there again, you can have a threat intelligence layer, right? Again, using AI, you can monitor all the OT traffic, IT traffic, see where there are patterns where you can probably figure out there could be some sudden burst of traffic. Maybe somebody's trying to hack into that. So you see all those signs or signatures, and then you can take some corrective action in between, right? Disable a particular port, right? And all that stuff, right? So you can have that gateway completely built as a hardware layer and connect OT and IT environments. You can also build this in software. You can have a software based OT or IT gateway, which will connect the environments, and you can manage it, right? So typically this is how it is done, Prem. But what is very important is, Prem, you cannot have a separate security strategy for OT and a separate
Yeah.
security strategy for IT. It has to be a one single strategy. One single strategy to protect OT and IT environment. The IT chief information security officer is responsible for IT. He should not say, "I have nothing to do with OT." You have to have a separate OT cybersecurity strategy. There has to be very close collaboration with those who are managing the OT and those who are managing the IT. So that is very important, Prem.
No, I think what you're saying is very clear. No, you made an important point where you said OT is separate, IT, CIO thinks it is not OT's job is not mine. Now I think with the cloud adoption, that layers have gone away is what that's faded out, right? If you adopt cloud, you need cloud security to be there. When you adopt an edge computing system, you need IoT and stuff to be there. When you push data, then you'll have to secure. You at the starting of the session, you had clearly told that you'll have to look at every layer that is
Yes,
there coming in, right? Whether it is from the data collection side or the network side or the endpoint side, every layer has to be secured.
secure.
Now, that's what you said.
Correct.
Now I don't think the CIO or CTO or the CISO is in that language, or the OT security guys are in that language. Security has become an organization driven strategy today, because
Yes.
earlier it was a tick mark, just a tick mark, I think. Now every pointer. And coming to the next point, where we have this DPDP Act coming in,
Yeah.
you have fines which are going to be very high when you are not
Yes.
maintaining compliance, right? So that's the way I think the whole structure of IT, OT, cybersecurity, IoT device, everything is clubbing together to bring a robust security system for us as an ecosystem, right? Am I right in saying that, Sunil?
No, absolutely. Totally agree. You talked about DPDP Act, will probably get enforced in the next few weeks, right? And
Okay.
there, uh, the for example, it could be a banking service company or healthcare provider company. Um, if they're going to use our data, then they have to tell us, they have to get our consent for it, right? And they also have to mention the purpose as to why they're going to use our data. And if for some reason
Consent
data is
management.
misused, then they have to actually pay fines, right? And that is all very documented, very well documented in the policy itself. right? So it's a good beginning for us to have the DPDPA, similar to what the GDPR is there for Europe and some other equivalent standards in US. But I think it's a good step that
CCPA
India.
is there, DDPA. For here, I think for medical you have the for the US they are having CCPA. GDPR is for the European markets and multiple things they are there. Again, for industry specific, again, we have some
Yeah.
guidelines and policies that are. Now, coming to the board side, so board sphere regulations should clamp down on IoT security gaps.
Sorry,
How
Prem, what's
should
the question?
companies board sphere regulations should clamp down the IoT security gaps? How should companies prepare today?
Actually, there was some disturbance just coming in. I couldn't hear your question again. Some disturbance was coming in. Can you repeat your question again? Sorry.
I'll repeat it. Now, yes.
Yeah.
Board sphere. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Sorry. Port.
Board sphere
Uh-huh.
regulations will clamp down the IoT security gaps. How should companies prepare today?
See, again, my point will here will be that um, one has to not just look at security for compliance standpoint. Okay, so you have these guidelines. You got to obviously comply with certain guidelines, but I just come back to the same point, Prem, that security by design, security by design has to be adopted at every layer. I mean, we talked about defense and depth, but
Hmm.
security by design is a must. And I talked about the security mindset, security by design, security mindset. All this has to work together, and yes, compliance is important uh, from a security perspective, but um, this aspect about security by design has to be kind of ingrained within an enterprise, right?
Hmm.
So that would be my response to that, Prem. Security by design at every layer will be extremely important, Prem.
No, I think one way of looking at is by design, and one way of looking at is by default, right? Security by default is something which these are the basics that you will have to look at while you design an application. By default, these are the security is to be considered. Can we take it like that, Sunil?
No, not really, Prem, because see, I'll tell you why. Because
Mm-hmm.
many of the assets, the devices, for example, I'll take manufacturing again. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of the machines that are there in the factories today are pretty old. They're about
Okay.
15 years, 10 years old, 20 years old. They've never been designed to connect to internet.
Okay. True. True. Got it. Got it.
So
Yeah.
they're not been designed to connect to internet at all. Many of them don't even have a port, and
True.
some have some RS-232 9-pin, 25-pin ports to which you can connect and get some data, but they're
Okay.
just not even some appliances, thermostats. They've just not been designed to connect to the internet. So you cannot think of security by default there. There you have to find ways by which you can connect and get data and secure that asset, right? And
True.
hence it's important that you follow security by design. That when you build a hardware, when you build a sensor gateway that is going to connect to that physical environment, which has never been designed to connect to internet, then you follow the security by design principles. Prem.
Got it, Sunil. I missed that old structure of the manufacturing side where we did not have
Yeah,
any devices. Got
yeah,
it.
even some of the older vehicles, like for
Hmm.
example, something which is like 17, 18 years old vehicle, there's no way by which you can connect a telematic device and connect it. So you'll have to find a way by which you can somehow plug in and connect to the vehicle. Might be a challenge. But the newer vehicles, yes, they have what is called CAN bus, to which you
Hmm.
can connect a telematic device. So you have a heterogeneous environment, no? Some old, some new. The newer
Okay.
are a lot more easier. Like even appliances at home, no, something which is like um, a washing machine or a refrigerator, um, they don't have ability to connect to internet. A lot of the
True.
manufacturers today are fusing IoT into that, and then you can get data, you can secure it and all that. But some of the older ones, there's no way by which you can connect to them.
Now, often, if you look at the CIOs, often complain about fragmented IoT ecosystems. How can security unify them into a growth driver?
Very important question. And IoT is it's a very fragmented ecosystem, and I'll tell you
Right.
why, Prem. If you just look at manufacturers of IoT hardware, devices, gateways, hundreds of them are there who make
Mm,
different types of devices. There are different communication protocols that are used to communicate between device to cloud. Lots of different protocols. For example, you have what is called MQTT.
mm,
Manufacturers use what is called OPC UA. Then you have TCP. Then you have what is called CoAP. So there are different protocols that are used to connect between the device and the cloud. Then there are different communication technologies. You have cellular 3G, 4G, 5G. Then you have unlicensed cellular, for example, LoRa, local long range. Then you have low power WAN networks. Then you have Wi-Fi. Then you have satellite.
mm.
Multiple communication protocols. There are different platforms. There are more than 500 IoT types of platforms. Companies who provide IoT platforms, more than 500 exist today, and just
Mm.
counting, right?
Okay.
So you're dealing with a very heterogeneous and a very fragmented ecosystem. Uh, Different, hardware manufacturers, different ways by which you're connecting to the cloud, different protocols used, and all that. So you can never. It is while they're talking about, for example, M2M1 was a standard that was established to make sure that you're able to use one standard to connect. It's not easy, right? To be able to connect. So if you really want to address this fragmented ecosystem, then you got to do standardization at the platform layer. That it becomes a lot more easier, because today there are platforms where you can convert a non-standard protocol into a standard protocol, right? And that can be done at the software layer. Tough to be done at the hardware layer. In the platform, you can have non-standard protocols connected to standard, a platform that can support different types of devices, a platform that can support multiple communication protocols, right? So at a platform level, there is a way by which you can connect all these different elements, right? And achieve some level of standardization. It's still a challenge, but at a platform level, at a platform layer, it is doable, Prem.
Great. Sunil, we are on top of the hour. I have two questions which I will take from here. Healthcare IoT device increase patient care, right? But raise data privacy pain points. How can leaders fix both?
So any healthcare device that you're going to use, a wearable or anything that is tracking vitals, first and
Mm.
foremost thing is that you have to make sure that it is certified device. Okay.
Okay.
There are bodies which do certification of these devices, and the cost for certification, because when you're using a certified, like of um, BIS, ISI standards, right, which is maintaining a particular standard, right, a quality. Same thing applies to this. You got to use a
Mm.
device, especially when you look at healthcare, which has to be certified. And when you go through certification, it does a lot of tests involved in certifying that device, right? So that is the first and foremost thing that you need to do, that you're going to buy a certified wearable, right? uh,
So,
and and if you are buying a certified wearable, that you it gives you a lot of confidence as well, that yes, I'm going to use a certified device, a wearable. And because you're tracking vital health information, right, your pulse rate, heartbeat, and so on and so forth. There is a body, which is it's called, there's a thing which is called ATEX certification, a
okay.
body which is doing this. And about 4 or 5 years back, they used to charge about $60,000 to $70,000 to do the certification. It's very expensive. So that is putting
Mm.
off people, manufacturers of this, because of this high cost. It used, but of course, now you have costs which have come down. Unfortunately, in India, we don't have too many certifying bodies. Many companies who want to certify device have to go to China or other countries to do it. But we need to have a lot more certification bodies, authorities in India have the test equipment to do the certification, right? So if you're going to use a certified medical device, then I think it's a good, it's a good confidence booster to you that you're using a certified device. Prem.
Thank you, Sunil. Now, coming to our last pointer, if IoT and IIoT became flawless, what would industries dare to build?
I don't think we'll get to a flawless situation at all. As individuals, no one can say that you are perfect, right? We are
Perfect,
always
right?
trying to improve ourselves, right? There is always
Yeah,
something to learn. We're trying to get a better version
true.
of ourselves. So I don't think we'll get to that flawless state at all, Prem. That is a very idealistic situation.
Idealistic
Uh,
situation.
yeah,
True.
so we'll never get to that. The best that we can do is to see where the risk is, where the vulnerability is, because you want to identify that vulnerability early and minimize the damage, right? The
Yeah.
so that so yeah, so that I would just state that security is all about mitigating and managing your risk well, trying to cut down the damage that you can cause an enterprise at the end of the day, Prem. Yeah.
Uh, Very important pointers there, Sunil. Now, I'll put a summary to what we've been discussing. We started with basics of what the industry is looking at and how adoption is shaping both India and globally, is what we started with. Then we spoke about the IoT security landscape, what is there today, how industries are adapting. We spoke about manufacturing, we spoke about automotive sector, we spoke about healthcare and stuff there. Then we also looked at some of the industry cases that you mentioned and how each layer has to be looked at
Hmm.
when you're securing IIT and IIoT devices. And today, the whole structure is there is a ecosystem that is there. You cannot say cloud will not look at security or cyber security is not part of OT side or IoT is a separate division or something like that. Now CIOs, CTOs, and CISOs and the OT professionals look at cybersecurity as a ecosystem rather than saying this is not my job. That's one pointer that you made it very clear in the start of the session where you said OT, IoT, and the manufacturing section are together to look at cybersecurity as a ecosystem rather than an individual
Yeah, just
piece
one
of.
point I want to make, Prem, and since you talked
Yes.
about the ecosystem, and that, of course, you need to build a lot more awareness among people about cybersecurity threats and all that. But one thing is the enterprise, whether it's a
Mm.
manufacturing enterprise or a banking or a healthcare company, should always realize that trying to build cybersecurity within an enterprise is not their core competency. A manufacturer's core competency is manufacturing goods. A
Manufacturing.
healthcare provider is responsible to provide healthcare services. The core competency is not that. And hence, they have to work with external partners, a cybersecurity consulting company, because you got to assess their risk and then you take action later on, right? So, working with an ecosystem of good cybersecurity experts, including startups, Prem. There are a lot of very good cybersecurity startups. So one has to work with the ecosystem to make sure that you're able to build the right cybersecurity framework, policies, and manage every layer, Prem. So I just wanted to mention that point.
So that's a very crucial point because you made one more point which is very important is each section or industry that is catering to certain services has to focus on what they are a genius or a pioneer in that and
Correct.
leave the cyber security to the experts who are there to
Exactly.
bring up that kind of a platform so that the manufacturing is aligned to the security practices that those devices or those manufacturing instruments should follow as a guideline which is the cyber security practices for each of the business lines, right? Now, that's what you are saying. Got that, Sunil. Now, with that, we would like to say one word is here is that IoT and IIoT, and I think there is MIoT also, right, Sunil? If you look at medical IoT devices, something like that. Am I right in saying that, Sunil?
Yeah, so we talked about it, healthcare. So, for
Okay.
example, your wearables,
Okay.
diagnostic equipment in the hospital, and all that. Yeah, so they're all now connected to IoT. Yes,
It's an IoT ecosystem which can be scaled across industries, healthcare, manufacturing, and others. That's what
absolutely.
we can say that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we spoke about how if IoT and IIoT security became flawless, which Sunil said is uh, it is a dream, but it can be achieved to a stage. But every day you'll find some of the new challenges coming, and we'll have to address those challenges and keep moving and upgrading our fortress of securing the devices with no loss of data. Am I right in saying that, Sunil?
no, absolutely, absolutely.
So those are the pointers that we discussed over the last 50 minutes of our discussion today, Sunil. And thank you for being here today, joining us today. To the audience, we have streamlined or streamed this podcast live to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Hope you found this discussion valuable. Sunil, any pointer that you want to make as a closing statement before we conclude, Sunil?
Yeah, I just want to end with one statement, Prem. Okay.
Okay.
Cybersecurity or security is not a technology problem, it's a business problem.
Yes, problem. Okay. It is more of securing the
It is a
business.
business problem. One has to look at it from the business lens, not from a technology lens. Because if you're compromised, then it impacts the business of the company, right? So it is a business problem that has to be dealt with.
Thank you for that, Sunil. And for the audience, we have scheduled our next podcast tomorrow at 6:30, and the topic of discussion is, can strategic storytelling really transform boardroom influence? At 6:30 p.m. tomorrow. And looking forward to see you. And good day. Bye. Bye for now, Sunil. Thank you for joining us today, and it's great to have you today, Sunil, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Prem. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you very much.